showing up as an investor for the last 30 years, consulting businesses for as many years. Started coaching businesses 15 years ago, mostly small, medium-sized technology businesses. And about 5 years ago, developed a peers group for mentoring. Trusted advisors, leaders that would come together. We do that periodically. The problem for every company, now certainly it's a bigger problem for a larger company, is how do they sustainably grow their existing business simultaneously exploring their future business successfully. They can't do that successfully. And I've explored different alternatives, and the reason that they can't is because part of what you mentioned is they have short-term focus. They're looking for efficiencies, not effectiveness. So it's short-term rewards and focus versus long-term rewards and long-term effectiveness, because it takes a long time. When you plant the seed, you want the flower the next day. and I do that too. I'm a human being. I want it right away. I'm in the world where I'm conditioned to immediacy. But innovation and the flower and the seed takes time. And it has to be the correct kind of approach, the correct time. You have to have many designs. That seems so obvious, but it wasn't that obvious before. So that's that, of course, with multiple designs, then you can pick out the right or the better design for that fit, and then be able to execute. One of the things that he mentioned, which is very clear to me, is design as if you're right and test as if you're wrong and execute as if you're perfect. So the assumptions have to be tracked. They cannot be dismissed or ignored. They have to be tracked. And I think that's what the speaker spoke about, and that's what resonated for me. And then how do we track it intelligently? It's a lot easier to do it on computer. I mean, I could have a zillion designs, and if I could just access it, just in case something happens, changes, all of a sudden I have that coming up to the top. So it's an interesting approach to working with a client. Here's the thing that I noticed is that we sacrifice. If we have one design, then we have a focus and attention to that. If we have 100 designs, then we split it up to 100. And so what we sacrifice is time. So how much time? Well, I think it all depends. Maybe we don't work. So maybe we don't do 100. We may create 100 designs, but we focus maybe on 5 and to narrow it down to the one that really matters. And I think that's what he's mentioning is you do want to get to one design, but you want to get to the one that really is the best of all of those and be able to have the flexibility to switch to another design just in case that happens. And that, I think, is really a business agility. And I think that kind of mindset needs to be nurtured and developed within an organization. Test it. We just put it out there. Do it. And if they don't like it, then we invested X amount of time and money and it didn't work out. But, we make best assumptions. So we don't go through that testing phase like a pharmaceutical company or arduously to do that, going through multiple designs. So it's the process that is wrong. The process is not effective. They're not thinking a process of multiple designs, testing until as if you're wrong, and execute as if you're perfect or execute perfectly. That's the process. Ready, aim, fire. So but then another saying came up as ready, fire, then aim. then I thought, oh, maybe that's the better way of doing it. So that's, I think it might be what he's talking about is ready multiple times, then aim multiple times, then fire once. It's down to a question of money. This is, or resources, but mostly money. You can get the resources if you have the money. So it's a question of money. The object, of course, is profitability. How much revenue can we bring out of this? And we've got different components: time, the talent, the resources available, competition, the environment that we're in. So there's different components, which all of a sudden, the more differentiations, the different areas that come up, that means you have to design for those contentions. Because they become what if scenarios. That's much easier done on a computer. So you can have 100 of them, much easier done, and you can test it out. The key here is we want to bring consensus to one perfect execution, or the most perfect execution. And so now what I'm thinking is, instead of being the ready, fire, aim situation, we really want to be ready and design and test and aim before we even fire, because we want to really narrow it down. And that's a skill set. I think that's a skill set that we can teach, or we can provide to our clients, because now we're focused in how to do this, asking the right questions, being able to extend it. And I think it's not going to be more in time and cost of time. I thought time would suffer, but not that much. So maybe we're talking, instead of maybe weeks or maybe months, that's still a short amount of time to be able to get it just right, just perfect. And the results are quantum leaps in terms of revenue stream. So you put that effort, more effort, in the ready, design, the testing, and the aim, more effort there before you fire. And that, I think, businesses can understand. As long as you can come up with a process, a model, a procedure to go through. We go through this and this. We'll get through the boring parts, because it's boring, but it's necessary conversations. Require some clarity in the coaching and be able to step them through, as long as we have the confidence that we know there's a process, we can design it, we get the tools. So I've got the tools. All of a sudden, they're starting to come together in a way that now I have a process when I communicate. Is it possible that we're flexing our assumption muscles? Those are muscles that need to be exercised, that are very difficult to exercise. We never want to exercise something that we don't see the results for. It's like boring, hard, difficult, unless we see a huge need and say, okay, this is the right way to do it. We need patience until we get there. So what if the answer is very simple? And the answer is really simple to this. Getting back to what the speaker says, just create another design. That's all. With different assumptions, that's all you have to do. And either revisit it or just park it. That's all. But the key is, we've got that. Somebody comes up with this particular scenario. We've got a design for that. Do we need to revisit, is the question, or not? And that may be the easier solution. So I think it's more clarity. If I could have, I've never had 10 or 15 or 100, and now I can compartmentalize my design and or confusion in one area. And I can go to that, and we can do that very quickly with a computer rather than doing it in our minds. Because I think we try to store it in our minds. Our culture is this, we start it here. Here's our parameters. And our minds are not built for doing that in quantity. I think computers, we could use that for quantity with the design, the parameters, and being able to have that bubble up. And that's our due diligence. I think if we do that due diligence, that we can now, because we've done that due diligence, now we can go forward with confidence to take that perfect execution. And many companies are going to be successful because they realize they can document the process, how it exists, in case that person is gone. Everybody's going to die at some point, but we want the entity, the system, to continue. So we believe in processes for the most part. Let's say 80% of companies do. What they are not getting is that a design is also a process. And I think that's the leap that I'm starting to come to an understanding, that I'm not designing the current situation, I'm designing the future situation. And that, I think, becomes intangible because we don't know what the future is. There's so many assumptions. Nobody's an expert about that. So if we're not an expert, our comfort level is what we know, our expertise, and our discomfort, we certainly avoid it because it's boring. It's not, it just doesn't resonate. But I think that might be the leap that we're talking about, creating a process for the future, the design.